What I want to do now is show you how my tool can be used to take a very rough piece of wood, such as this chunk, and make it round in fairly short order with very little trauma. The tool is very easy to control with these interrupted cuts, as you'll see when I start spinning this thing around. You can also see how rough it truly is. I have only slightly rounded this off on a bandsaw, leaving it purposely rough so I can show you how it behaves. So let's spin it up here. Of course, you have to be careful when you spin something like this up. I cleared the tool rest, and now I'm going to push the tool in far enough to start finding the high spots. As you can see, some material starting to come off the tool as I go back and forth, sweeping it to get all the really high spots off and start bringing them all consistent. As you get a feel for where the surface is, then you can start getting a little more aggressive. As you can see now, I'm starting to take more off and still sweeping back and forth very easily. Now you can see I can extend this also quite a ways over the tool rest, and nothing is catching or grabbing. You're cutting with a cobalt steel tool bit that's very sharp. You run it just about on center, and just use it basically like a very small scraper. Since it is so sharp though, it's really just slicing through this wood easily. You can see it's really starting to throw chips around now. This log is fairly dry, so it's not one of those green logs that are really easy to cut. As I go back and forth, you can see now I'm starting to get fairly aggressive. You can get kind of cocky with this thing sometimes, and it's actually fairly forgiving. We'll shut the lathe down now and take a look at our progress, and it's going well. I can now put my tool rest in with confidence on one of the machine surfaces as a reference, because I know they're all equal. Nothing is sticking out beyond that. Now we can spin it up a little faster because, of course, the piece is a little more evenly balanced. And the tool likes to cut better the faster you go. So if you really like to get aggressive, just spin the lathe up and cut into it. Now I'm starting to really sweep back and forth and aggressively start getting this into the round shape I want. You can see I'm doing the back, and the reason you can see it is because there are many voids, because you still have this thing quite a ways out of round. You haven't made a solid piece out of it yet because of all those corners that are still sticking up. But you can also see that they're disappearing fairly quickly now. So go back and forth now, you're getting more consistent cutting, and you can really start getting aggressive with this. See, now I'm starting to make the face of it more true and flat, and I can extend way over the tool rest and still have complete control. It's probably a good thing you are not the camera right now, because you'd be getting a face full of chips. I'm starting to define my bowl shape, even though I haven't got it completely round yet, because it's always good to know where you're going, and then you can find a way to get there. And consider how well your roughing gouge or even bowl gouge would behave trying to do this, and doing it this quickly. It's becoming more and more round now, and we can shut it off and see now that it's starting to look considerably more like a bowl. That bark inclusion hasn't caused us any trouble, because this tool really doesn't care what it's cutting, and even when it's not cutting, it doesn't tend to release as harshly rather, as a spindle gouge. Now I can really spin it up fast because it's so much more balanced that the lathe is going to handle it. And as I said before, the faster you go, the more this tool likes it. Starting to really throw chips out the back now. Starting to really make this completely round. And of course, when you get it more rounded off just before your final shape, you might want to go to a bowl gouge to get that fine cut and leave the really, really smooth surface that you want, so you don't have to sit there all day with sandpaper. Of course, depending on the wood, with this tool, I would say the harder the wood, the better the surface is going to be when you're done with it. Now, it doesn't look like that rough log anymore. It's starting to really look like a vessel. Now we can go and work on the face of this and start making that flat and make the roughness go away. So let's spin it up here. Now, as you can see, I want to get to the center, and I don't have to worry about tightly locating my tool rest near the center. I could just stick this tool way out there and cut away, and it's not difficult. It won't catch on me, so I don't have to concern myself with that. That helps a great deal too, because as you know, the longer you can leave your tailstock in place, the better and more safe you are. I can always make that little tenon go away later, but for right now I like it there just for that added security that the piece is going to stay on my lathe. And as you can see, that tool is not jumping at all when I'm going from the bark inclusion to the wood, which normally would give you an interrupted cut and almost an impact load on your tool. We can spin it back down now and take a look at our progress. Much flatter face. Of course, additional turning will carry on from here, but I just wanted to show you how this tool works on a really, really rough piece of wood.